Yeah.
My name is Anita, and I'm speaking for Fairmont. What on the app? Is anybody not ready?
Sorry, excuse me. I'm good.
Everyone's leadership. We're moving the nuclear race now to 2025. The China's turning marketing reactors cheap. The U.S. must finance SMRs. Decisions this year dictate whether developers have resources. Affirming revitalizes U.S. leadership. As Health Brand 25 finds that our nuclear industry supports competitiveness abroad. 85% of reactors are Russian or PRC fueled by until the have been demonstrated at home. Tax credits provide immense value, providing a hedge of kind against first-time costs. Countries prefer U.S. reactors. Gaddy 19 finds that the nuclear ecosystem is vulnerable to domination and will seek U.S. leadership in nuclear. There must be viable, non-authoritarian partner agreements aren't locked in yet. Since Lucky 23 finds that projects have been second planning or non-committal, competing offers might be chosen over Rossicom. Leadership determines hegemonies. Rodriguez 23 finds that hedges evolving as Russia and China emerge in nuclear exports by establishing nuclear energy. Russia in turn clients remain dependent position to exert influence. China develops supply chain rendering client dependent through which can secure some hold expand hedge. Hegemonic decline trigger adventures in great power wars. Arrow 25 finds that China and Russia and NOVA for challenging U.S. power absent a hegemon leaders sense constraints confidence see opportunities to pursue violent means adversaries test willingness prompting uproar that forces the president's hand. This causes extinction through nuclear war. Star 15 finds the nuclear war will create post-war environment too cold dark to grow through humans to advance our contention to his sub. America's SSBN fleet is aging out to new nuclear subs and navies. Columbia 24 finds that 80 Columbia subs replacing aging Ohio class and maintaining nuclear deterrent. Ohio class submarines responsible for nuclear deterrent. Columbia class replacing nuclear reactors do not require refueling, but nuclear power issues have delayed Columbia will miss 2027 deadlines. With Growth 24 finds that late delivery of turbines for Columbia SSBN main obstacle turbines must be installed before full steel delay cascade to other systems. In the acceptance, we find that Columbia subs now set to deliver in 2029, 18 months behind. Investments also delays and reassure suppliers. Field 22 finds that resources supported them through economic incentives, incentivize new workers, equipment, facilities, commitments, reassure suppliers and guarantee demand, lowering risks, increase likelihood, supplier support, self-production, improving speed. Columbia will be delivered. Failure kills sub-base nuclear deterrents and seeds ground China/Russia. So for 24 finds that Columbia delays weaken national security, even the Ohio class backbone of deterrent subs remains a critical part of the defense, especially when Russia and China ramp up without self-balanced power. Navy can get subs on time, weaken nuclear deterrent when global threats are on the rise. Cross price star, nukes cause extinction, and Columbia subs tap nuclear escalations. Osborne 25 finds that Columbia saved the world, moving secretly holding adversary weapons. Disruption from unknown locations, undersea deterrence, guarantee second strike and current annihilation of any country that attacks. Promise of disruption keeps the peace. Columbia #1 priority. And contention through his transition, clean energy transition inevitable but must be fast. In Warland 21 finds that clean energy not fast enough finance is missing rise in energy demand, pre-save energy crisis. Oil has stalled consistent with limiting warring spending on clean energy remains below creating supply disruptions. Indeed, West 24 finds that the transition is inevitable. The world is in quick enough slowdown from largest emitter through a wrench into efforts. Only nuclear energy solves investment is key. Grossly 24 finds that a color of uranium produces 3 barrels of oil. Nuclear needs fewer materials and land doesn't rely on weather. Plants operate as reliably as 3 times for 3 times many years as wind and solar taxes left under investment, upfront cost made it difficult to support. Repurposing ensures fast development is Dasani 24 find the SMR type. Repurpose coal plants to power and coal sites with nuclear offers clean energy. 79 physical sites for coal to nuclear existing transmission lines and power reduced construction time. Nuclear energy is cheaper climate goals. Matthew 25 the plants produce no emissions during operation comparable with wind, and 1/3 of solar plants can replace fossil fuel nuclear reduced with CO2 2 gigatons per year. Nuclear compensated 2 years of CO2 emissions. Otherwise, it's existential 10.25 climate change collapse size and massive extinction. Climate change trigger catastrophic risks and conflict and disease. Scenario 2 peak oil. Peak oil's guarantees economic collapses. On 23 times the world is on edge. Sectors are interconnected. Price hikes have inflationary effect. Global oil production peak around 2025. Damage is irreversible and instant. As Town 9 finds it feels lower quantities. Exploration vehicles at high cost for locating deposit increases. Nuclear energy insulated shocks. The lead time find that during energy crisis in the 70s, price of oil tripled. During absent action, the world war ensues. As bundle 18 find that rising revenues gives Russia Iran confidence to lead the rest of the behavior. Revenue pressures, petroleum, cash to military. One standard deviation increase in price associated with 13% increase in discount.
I think we're missing the mark on this.
Yeah,
Just some mark. Like this mark off to cover everything about time. See the mark on this third one, the highlights were a little off in the third one, so that's very good, we know that 16 to 11 seems consistent right now.
I just started there.
you should do something.
Yeah.
I'm gonna download Doc. I'll send it as soon as I get your group. I just got it. I'm gonna send it. Doc sent. Let me know when everyone gets it, and then I'm gonna start.
There shouldn't be any prepping or anything going on while we're waiting for this to be sent.
Oh, my bad, I have it. I just got it.
All right, well, is everyone good? Sounds good. Time starts now. We negate contention when it's 4 o'clock. Courts are working efficiently now as voters 23 finds the courts investing in improved innovations, remote hearings, and critical investments. The act opens the floodgates and overburdens the courts. McNeil to other team funds the program's attack for regulatory burdens. Congress strips the agency of authority occurred in the passage of bills. Legal challenges would be inevitable. Expect endless stream of lawsuits. Empirics prove as News 25 finds the lawsuit against NRC, Utah, and Texas are in a lawsuit. Mere risk of litigation decimates innovation as Lead 21 finds the costly litigation deters investment. Amplified loss of sales disruption of lines and bankruptcy curtailed acquisitions. Litigation risk reduces innovation by 7%. Innovation solves existential risks as Hagerty 17 finds and tech advance leads us to a sustainable world. Existential risks overcome with advances in tech, pandemics, asteroids, eruption, advances in spaceflight likely to endure. Contention 2 is biodiversity. The NRC maintains nuclear safety now as Bulletin 23 finds that the NRC increases enforcement and compliance, supportive training. Each nuclear plant will have an inspection, affirming overstretches resources, killing implementation. As Gilbert 21 finds that due to limited resources, the NRC was unable to develop rules. Reviews can be lengthy and involve unexpected costs. Advanced reactors pose additional burdens. That shreds oversight as CBS 19 funds the NRC's cost-cutting moves reduces time and scope of inspections, weak security led to disaster. Independently, Wasserman 16 finds that large reactors dump 1.25 billion gallons of water into the ocean, 20 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than natural, laden with toxic chemicals, and can have serious adverse effects on aquatic life. Moreover, improper disposal decks diversity, as FJ23 finds that radioactive waste is a concern to water pollution. It remains hazardous for thousands of years. Leaks or failures in containment structures lead to the release of radioactive materials. Accidents will deck biodiversity, as Olson et al. 11 finds that radiation thousands of kilometers away, the consequences are substantial and long-term. Permanent genetic alterations occur, affect entire species. Any biodiversity loss would cause cataclysmic extinction, as Exeter 18 finds. The loss of one leads to greater risks of runaway extinction cascades. Interactions between species are important for ecosystems. An impact on one species can affect others. Biodiversity loss can cause runaway extinction cascades. Biodiversity loss empirically causes war, as LSO9 finds that 80% of armed conflicts in the most biologically threatened places on Earth. 90% of major armed conflicts occur in biodiversity hotspots. Contention 3 is terror. Nuclear facilities are safe for now, as Earnhardt et al. 21 finds that while extremists are motivated, no extremist groups have obtained the resources to carry out nuclear terrorism. Affirming drastically increases the risk of nuclear terror, as Pashby 25 finds that interest in nuclear spurred by government funding risks the creation of dirty bombs. Non-state actors will access material they could never imagine. SMRs complicates ensuring the security. The NRC is woefully unprepared, as GAO 24 finds that the NRC has not implemented actions to strengthen the security of radioactive materials. This leaves reactors vulnerable to exploitation, as Earnhardt et al. 21 finds that a nuclear attack is a perfect tool to sow chaos. Extremists have an explicit intent and interests in nuclear terrorism, documented attempts by extremists. A successful nuclear attack triggers war, as Hayes 18 finds that nuclear states to escalate against other states and believe that this state not sponsored the non-state act, this triggers nuclear war. And you can classify SAR for their case that nuclear war causes extinction. Thus, nuclear. Ready to post.
Madam Clerk,
Mhm.
let's talk a little bit about terror. Can you specify who exactly is going to be creating their bombs?
Our evidence specifies right-wing terrorists.
Like who?
Proud Boys, KKK, like our evidence
Okay,
says about
so
it.
have they tried to get nuclear material?
Yeah, our Pashby evidence finds that they explicitly have like documented attempts at them doing it before,
Wait.
but because the security was far more stringent back then, they weren't able to.
Wait, sorry, where in Pashby evidence does it say that someone has tried to make a dirty bomb from nuclear reactors before? If anything, I can read the Pashby evidence where it just says terrorism.
Sorry, it was the Earnhardt evidence. It says, and this is the part we highlighted, quote, documented attempts by violent far-right extremists to commit acts of radiological terror.
Wait, it says they have an explicit interest in nuclear terrorism, but it
No.
doesn't say that they've done
Go
it.
to the bottom of the card. It says that they've tried to. I'm gonna take a question now.
Okay, go for it.
All right, let's talk about this peak oil arguments. Explain to me how like nuclear investment solves peak oil.
Yeah, so the way that nuclear investment solves peak oil is that it decreases our dependence on oil. When we decrease our dependence on oil, then there's less intervention because prices of oil decrease. It's supply and demand.
Wait, why would the price decrease? The demand, like, the supply would still, like, the reason why your evidence includes that the price would like increase is because there's not enough supply, right? Us investing in nuclear does not change that.
Yeah, it does. Let's think about this really simply, right? I think that there's a very simple analogy we can use here. Let's say we're at a party. There are 5 boxes of pizza, 15 people. Suddenly, 5 people are like, I don't like pizza anymore. I'm going to get, I don't know, something like a sandwich. Then you have 10 people to feed with 5 boxes of pizza. That means there's less
So,
demand, and that means that the cost.
This analogy
increases.
sounds
Also
good.
the
Hold on,
question-
no, this analogy sounds good, but you're forgetting the fact that there are like 200 countries in the world, and the US is one of them. It's not 5 people out of 15 no longer wanting pizza.
I think.
It's 1 person out of 207 not wanting pizza.
Right, but I think that you're missing the nuance that the US is one of the greatest consumers of oil in the world. I'll take the
Where does
question.
your evidence?
Yeah, I'll take a question. Let's talk a little bit about meltdowns. Specifically, you say that biodilost happens to such a great extent that it causes war. We had Fukushima and 3 Mile Island, 2 nuclear reactor meltdowns. Why didn't biodiversity loss cascade into a nuclear
Yeah,
war?
two things. One, our evidence finds that the new nuclear projects are far larger than anything else.
Which evidence says that?
I can find the evidence in a second, but the second, like while I'm finding it, the second reason why it would be worse is that if you have so many more reactors like in the affirmative world, then the risk just increases, right? Like your world, the Fukushima one was like one singular disaster. If you have like
Right, but I
5
think
different.
that the baseline of risk is pretty low to begin with, but that's just about.
Alright, we're gonna run a little bit of alright, when someone for dog. Make it easier for this.
Just let me know when that's done. Also I have 56 seconds.
Sure, I think.
Yeah, we took 50, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, really.
Alright. It should be some.
Oh, yeah.
And then I'll just, do you notice it when I mark on something mark after, so because they're like, well, that's fine.
Yeah. I'm talking about, so.
Yeah, whenever you guys.
Pick on
You
it.
got it?
Yeah.
Alright, I just got it, let me pull it up. real quick.
Yeah,
no
let
worries.
me open it. Okay, cool.
Is good. I'm sorry. Let's go into the argument of court law. First, we'd say that these cases we find as a joint class action, there wouldn't be a ton of individual court cases that are being filed. But second, COVID is already with the judiciary resort. As Thomas and 20 writes, courts across the country grapple with the fallout from the pandemic. Courts have embraced holding other hearings and teleconferences. The pandemic was not the disruption any of us wanted, but it might be the disruption we needed to transform the judiciary into a more efficient branch of the government. But second, cut the card. There's new laws that prevent court fraud. Bowman 21 the standing doctrine that all of this serves as a get out of jail free card to federal courts who can dispose of litigation does not seem mysterious of a procedural question rather than substantive evaluation. Cut the card there. But second, patents don't go through court's office. We feel right to grant a patent to be challenged either via patent office or in a court of law unless the 0.0004% of all live patents in FY22 are fully invalidated by PTAB 132 out of more than 3 million patents. What this basically means is their argument that there's going to be some sort of patents that are going to be stopped is one, not true because barely any patent cases actually go to court. We look at what is going to court and what is actually going to happen. Third, the impact is just really vague. They said that innovation is going to increase. They can't name you specific technology that's going to come out of innovating or which patents are being stopped. You should really feel uncomfortable going through an argument where you do not even know what is being innovated or which target or what actual incident you're actually innovating against. Let's go on to the second argument. One, there is no impact to meltdown. As Rhodes 18 finds that nuclear releases less radiation than any other source. The coal is a major source of radioactive releases, and even the worst accident is less destructive than other initial accidents. The 3 Mile accidents receive radiation doses of only 1 milligram exposure for X-rays about 6, which means we were 1/6 safer from the whole nuclear reactor meltdown from the 3 Miles Island. But statistically, it's 0 risks. Automated noting finds that the probability of an accident 1 in more than 1,000,000 per year of operation. And third, if poor oversight exists, the impact happens anyway, since existing reactors will just break down and meltdowns will occur with no impact to just turn Chernobyl, Fukushima, and 3 proof. There's a double line. Either A, the regulation already is really bad, which means current reactors mess up, or B, nothing's going to be happening bad and there's no actual impact to it. Fourth, the companies that are using it won't care and ensure safeguards because they want to avoid reputational and liability damage. Utilities companies also care about reliability. They're only insured by secure reactors. It's a competitive market and you're safer when you have more deals. And companies self-regulate. Given 24 fines. After the TMI-2 incidents, utilities recognize the need for more self-regulation and better management of individual reactor risks. Utility created institutions develop standard safeguards, emission expectations, and established the INPO. Third, biodiversity and natural pollution not essential. Even using 90% of all species would not be extinctions. Curzon 18 was that altered ecosystem functions not point to essential risk. Biodiversity being declined, but regional biodiversity is the same. And in the world scenarios seeing far vegetation develop and increased wealth, they clean the air, water, and reduce environmental damage to decline. Cut the next card. And accidents are physically impossible. So ERP no data that runaway chain reaction is not physically possible. Modern nuclear reactors have a negative reactivity coefficient. Fuel temperature rises, the reaction slows down. Nuclear facilities that equipped with hundreds of sensors cause a complete reactor shutdown. And on this argument waste, we see that we develop models like France and we repurpose waste if we're definitely increasing investment, which is what we've seen in previous countries do, which means waste doesn't just get dumped. Let's go into this argument on terror. There's a couple responses we could start with. One, their argument's kind of illogical because A, they have to first win the fact that people break into facilities, but then they can access this weapon grade uranium. Remember, you have to enrich uranium or plutonium to actually make it weapons grade in the first place, which they haven't proved that the terrorists have the capability to do. Which means even if they win the fact these facilities can be broken into, you can't enrich uranium. Second, the byproducts are literally uranium, it's not plutonium. Plutonium has a long enrichment process. But third, if you go specifically, our evidence finds that empirics prove it's too hard and there's no symbolic values. Shallow 18 find the terrorists started attacking nuclear plants in September 11. How many attacks on nuclear? 0. Plot 0. Nuclear would be more difficult. Airspace was restricted, and the plane would be shoot down before impact. Cut the card there. And security defense are coming as DO 324 finds that DOE issued 900 million to support SMRs, planning to de-risk SMRs with the NNSA and incorporate security safeguards and addressing key gaps. And our evidence specifically finds that nuclear reactors are especially safe. Our evidence holistic lapses and finds that WANE 24 finds that nuclear reactors will be more resistant to such attacks than virtually any civil installation study we're undertaking. There's specialist consultants consider that the U.S. reactor structures are robust and will protect the field from impacts of large commercial aircraft and penetrating reinforced concrete requires multiple hits by high-speed artillery or specifically done bunker busting ordnance. Cut the card there. They haven't given capability analysis of any of these right-wing groups, and the only right-wing group they didn't come up with is in cross and nothing but evidence. I'll send them on. Why do you think it is? All right. 1, 2, yeah. 4 to March.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Are you sending anything out for rebuttal?
What?
Are you sending anything out for rebuttal?
Yeah, I'm going to. I
What do you-
don't know what yet I'm gonna do yet, but I have to check with my dog first.
Didn't the other judges get it?
Just that.
Got it.
I don't know.
I just got it.
I just don't.
We'll take. Prep. Starting now.
Okay.
You're on Schellenberg.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish not.
Okay. Here we go.
I'd have that as an.
Yeah.
It's gonna go, I'm not even gonna touch base. I'll send it on.
How much prep was that?
Minute 5.
On the mark afterward. No, fuck it, then. Let me know when.
Okay.
Give me 1 second. Sure. Yeah. Okay. Let me know. Everybody good? On course, the first thing that they say is that it's all going to be a class action lawsuit, but they have conceded that our evidence indicates that the vast majority of these lawsuits have unique loopholes inside of them, which prevents them from going to class action in the first place. Each is uniquely different, which requires them to go through a different judge. Their class action or an argument isn't specific. The second thing that they say is that COVID made us resilient, but even if we're on Zoom, which is what their evidence is talking about, the course can still get backlogged, which is why our NN evidence is published after COVID and so finds it as the risk of opening the floodgates. The third thing that they say is new laws are being added, but their evidence is talking about Section 230. It has nothing to do with power plants or patent courts. They say that they don't go through courts and go for arbitration, but this is not hyper specific to our scenario. The vast majority of power plants are multi-million dollar corporations, so they're willing to go to court. They're not willing to go through arbitration. It goes to court, which will backlog the patent procedure. They say what technology, but our evidence indicates to say laundry list of existential threats that we need more innovation to happen, i.e. things like vaccine developments and more better solar panels that we all need to be able to resolve back to the next extinction scenario, go to the NRC. The first thing that they say is that less radiation. Their evidence is only talking about 3 on Isle Island, but there's a history of a lot worse ones. For example, Chernobyl, which independently had a large biodiversity impact. They say that it's statistically net zero risk. It's from the IAEA saying that there's a low risk in the status quo, but our argument is that lack of oversight in the, because Trump is gutting the NRC makes it uniquely likely. They, which also responds to their third response. They say that companies have the incentive to do it, but our evidence indicates that the vast majority of countries undervalue the actual risk of it happening, which is why our evidence indicates that if new unproven designs are going to most likely cause the extinction scenario that they've talked about. Even if it's a competitive market, they do not view the risk of being high, so they don't put less financing into it. They say that it's physically impossible to melt and we can just repurpose water, but they have considered the Wasserman link, which is that nuclear energy releases heated water 20 Celsius hotter than surrounding water, which kills huge amounts of fish population. Moral analogy causing biodiversity collapse, and also 90% of conflicts have links to biodiversity loss. We do not need to win an existential scenario. On terror, they say that it's not enriched, but our evidence indicates it's enriched enough to be able to make a dirty bomb. We don't need full weapons grade uranium. Moreover, their evidence isn't taking into account right-wing terror groups. They're saying that there's been zero plots or talking about Al-Qaeda, not specific to our scenario. Moreover, new security measures are entirely hypothetical. Historically, SMRs has been decentralized, especially with the NRC being gutted. There's a lack of oversight. Finally, their thing about protection is talking about planes being rammed into it. It's not being talked about stealing weapons grade uranium, which is specific to our dirty bomb scenario. Go to their case. On hedge, number one, Trump's leadership is ending. Trump is retreating, and the leverage to sacrifice Ukraine, pandering to Putin, entrenched Chinese influence in Europe's advanced blasted our allies. Second, U.S. laws tech solvency agreement. 18 exports are limited by laws and inefficient processes. Stringent conditions make U.S. tech less appealing. Third, China exports of nuclear material are down. Willis 24 finds that Chinese companies have more negative views towards building reactors relegated to coastal areas and limited its scope of failure. Past bilateral nuclear agreements make it unlikely. Fourth, Russia exports of nuclear energy materials are declining now. Old plants are closing. Lack of natural resource to Ukraine. Below 24 Russian nuclear power plant in 2023 decreased by 2.8%. Cut the card there. On C2 about subs, one investment now declared from April finds that there's funding is substantial. Balloons at 348 billion over its lifetime. Navy's submarine search is a bolding bid. Second, landing of all problems. The Atlas and software. Nicola 25 finds that production rates for Virginia class submarines remain stock. Workforce issues. Post-pandemic labor shortages comes with an aging workforce. Geopolitical tensions and cyber attacks. Third, detection makes subs obsolete. Submarines are so easily detectable, become billion-dollar talk and submarine errors fading into history. Go to C3 on transition. One, the transition is fast enough now. Considering goalie funds and solutions are coming racing forward. Clean tech is coming in cheaper than ever. Positive tipping points are happening worldwide. Click there, and the only evidence read about total emissions is us gapping 25 and 2024 emissions fell by 1.8%. Second, all software weather issues. Allison 24 solar, wind, hydropower, decentralized example, multiple sources that can balance each other out when fluctuations happen. Solar energy is less affected during cloudy periods, but wind turbines can continue producing power on climate. There's no repurposing. Significant challenges in converting coal sites between nuclear. No precedent for coal to nuclear conversions, which decks the time frame on their scenario. Then on peak oil is fake and demand on peak before supply. 25 peak oil is a meme. Driven by people with no industry experience. Peak oil ignored economies, fracking and horizontal drilling, unlock massive U.S. tight oil reserve decking. Decline peak oil models also ignore Canada's oil sands and Brazil's deep water pre-salt major supply sources. There you go.
Plus the 55, so 9.5 to 30. We'll do the math for this one second. Did you get across?
Yeah.
All right, another first question. Let's go to court. Read me a line that's highlighted that specifies these loopholes that makes a lot of patents come through, a lot of court cases come through.
Yeah, so the analysis that I
No, read me
did,
a line from the evidence that was like read in case. Don't like read me a warrant that you gave in the rebuttal.
Yeah.
Read me a warrant that was read in case.
I'm gonna pull up the case law.
Yeah.
So just off the top of my head, I know just because it's like pretty rhetoric, it says quote, open the floodgates of lawsuits. But
Right.
I can read a specific line to you once I pull it up. That's just off the top of my head, because I remember the rhetoric.
Right, it's fine. I have it right from you. It just says the federal government should expect an endless stream of lawsuits from states and interest groups.
Yeah.
At best could change the.
Legal challenge would be inevitable. Expect an endless stream of lawsuits, and then empirics prove, which is like really important, is about the lawsuits against the NRC in Utah.
Right, it just says there's two lawsuits that were filed, but.
Yeah,
It's
because
two states.
we haven't been doing there's very limited expansion
Really?
of nuclear power plants in the last 30 years. The last time we built a plant was 2016.
I think that we've had like a lot of projects that are going through, and obviously they have.
No, they haven't.
gone through. Yeah, we've had like so many projects, like
No, we have not.
Bill Gates started the projects, like there's some.
The last power plant that was actually like under construction was in 2016.
This wasn't about like construction, this was about approval, and it was like, we've had so many projects go in.
So you didn't read any evidence on that, and that's also just not true. And for the ones that we have had projects go past with, they've all led in a stream of floods of litigation.
I think extreme floods is an exaggeration, we can get the question.
I mean, it literally says endless stream of lawsuits. It's pretty good rhetoric in the evidence. I'll take a question.
Yeah, go for it.
Let's talk about subs. So specific to subs, what makes like Columbus class different than Virginia class?
I don't know the exact differences between the classes, but I'm pretty sure our evidence specifically says it's the late delivery that's really bad, and the Ohio class is getting really old and aging, and that right now the responsible like deterrents need to be replaced, right? So
But the link evidence that you read says we have a shortage of Columbus class subs.
right, and
Can
that's
you-
one, yeah, the Columbus class cells are the latest turbines, and the main instant, like the main issue is that the turbines can be installed before the hull is sealed, right? But the turbines can't be installed.
But your evidence also says we have Virginia class subs. So I'm asking you, like, what is the difference?
Right.
Why do we
So-
uniquely need?
Our evidence specifically says it's the Columbus class subs that are really good because they're undersea deterrence is like the biggest thing, and their unknown location.
Which evidence says that?
Osborne evidence, it's the Columbus subs happening investigation. I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about biod, right? Since you can see that biod itself doesn't cause extinction, can you tell me what conflict is gonna happen in one of like the wastewater areas where?
Yeah,
In
the,
the United States.
the evidence is like fantastic in the sense that it literally says 90% of all conflicts are as a result of like have direct correlation.
Yes,
to
so just tell me where it would
biodiversity.
happen, like, because obviously if.
Border with Mexico, for example,
Wait, so, but why would we have conflict with Mexico if the biod loss is happening in the US?
it can spill over. Like the majority of plants we have are on coastal regions that border other countries.
Okay, sure. that was-
Yeah, and we also have a lot of power plants like thousands of miles off the coast of the United States.
Sure, okay. Let me do the math now for 111.
It was 216.
Okay, so that's what, that's 634. No, 44, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, we're gonna run, but it's gonna be over time.
We're just gonna be at wing and then.
Right, it's gonna want to- halfway.
We're on the argument about credibility. Senate. We're phasing out fossil fuels in October, catastrophic warning, but aren't filling in with green tech, meaning we inevitably fall back. That's one. Only nuclear energy solve. It requires less land and materials than wind and solar and isn't contingent on the weather. It also lasts 3 times as long. However, underinvestment is an issue as companies won't follow unless we reduce upfront costs for growth. It's done quickly by repurposing existing infrastructure for Optisomnium. This solves climate change. It phases out fossil fuels and emits nothing. It has a lifetime of CO2 third as much as solar, empirically reducing CO2 gigatons a year and offsetting 2 years of emissions per Smith. Without this, Kemp finds that climate change goes existential because of resource wars. They tell you that the transition is fast enough. That's not true because renewables aren't enough, and all implementation plans with a renewable grid are idealistic with flaws. Plaque 17, wind and solar are variable energy sources, and some may be found to be address the issue of how to provide energy if their immediate output cannot continuously meet instantaneous demand. Relying 100% on wind, solar, and hydroelectric power can make climate mitigation more difficult and more expensive than it means to be. Largely, you know that right now we are reducing emissions. That might be true. They read that evidence, but we're not filling in with enough green tech. They tell you that alt solve for weather issues. That doesn't matter. It still goes nuclear. They tell you that there isn't going to be repurposing. Investment solves. Let's go to the way. Let's go to the way. First on time frame, the exponential tipping point means that extinction is coming soon in the next 5 years, and knock-on effects of warming will trigger their internal links far before then. Think escalating resource wars or economic collapse by a natural disaster. It's try or die because extinction is inevitable by 2030, so where the only risk of solvency and the net impacts are non-unique. At that point, you know a few things, that we are on a sure track to extinction right now, but the act is the only way to solve back for that. But then you can also extend probability. It's their internal link, but magnified climate change causes converging existential crises like resource wars. That's why we're always a prereq. Let's go to there. First, on court clause, they can see that patents don't go through courts often. That's the WIPO evidence tells you that the grant of patent can be challenged either by a patent office or in a court of law that's different than the court of appeals. That's why court clause doesn't matter, which means innovation itself won't be affected, but less than 0.004% of all life patents in financial year 2022 were fully invalidated. That means that there isn't going to be court clause issues, but also the innovation that they talk about is never going to happen if we're too worried about climate change. Let's go to their second argument. They could see the Rose evidence, which tells you 3 Mile Island received a radiation dose of only 1 millirem. Exposure from a chest rate is about 6 millirem, which means that there isn't biodiversity loss. But also we tell you that companies have an incentive to self-regulate and make sure a meltdown doesn't happen. This incentive analysis for companies is fully conceded. They can't specify where the meltdown is going to happen or how it's going to happen or what specifically is bad. But then the terror argument is really, really bad. You should feel most uncomfortable voting for this because terrorists have no incentive to attack nuclear power plants. That's the Schellenberger evidence. There's no symbolic value, but also nuclear plants are very safe because there's no such thing as a runaway chain reaction. They're physically impossible. That's the EPRI evidence. That means in the long term, you're not able to create a nuclear terror attack.
I think also just read one card last.
Claude Plank.
Yeah, Plank. Yeah, I just sent it.
I'm gonna pull up timer, and we'll start about that. Starts. That was 1:30, we have 21. Okay. The order is gonna be starting on the neg weighing. Is everyone ready? Cool. Time starts now. We're going to be going for a thorough argument about terror. The evidence found that there is no risk of nuclear terror right now. These facilities are secure. Casualty funds of the foreign creates dirty bombs. Explosions are decentralized, not low security. This threat allows terrorists to easily break in and steal uranium and create dirty bombs on her. There's a scorecard funds that the U.S. is uniquely likely for nuclear terror. Right-wing groups have historically seek that nuclear weapons. Case funds and nuclear terror causes extinction. One great using even a small dirty bomb would cause the cyber clouds function to think of another nation. You're thinking to strike as well. It's called international blackout on all out nuclear war, which causes extinction because of nuclear winter. Let's go to their responses. The first thing that they say is that there's no incentive. A, they consider the fact that nuclear plants are a huge symbol of tech and U.S. government power, which means that there definitely is an incentive. And B, the fact that empirics are just conceded the fact that they had tried to do it before, they just weren't able to because they still had the security system. The fact that a lot of people would die is enough for right-wing terror groups who want to destroy the U.S. Second. They say that no chain reaction, but all their evidence is specific to plane crashing into a nuclear plant, not our argument about stealing uranium bombs. None of this defense is actually applicable. Why does this argument come first? They say two things on the weighing level. The first is that it's try or die. But A, if we win time frame, then it would mean that we're still going to be far ahead on the actual extinction debate. You should have voted to preserve humanity for as long as possible because there might be future actors who can solve for things like climate change. And we're also going to be winning the uniqueness debate, but we'll get more onto that in later case. Second, they say that it's going to be a magnifying war, but they have not given you a reason as to why we need multiple war scenarios. The fact that one nuclear war causes extinction means that you should always vote neg to prevent a nuclear war from happening in the first place. Why do you prefer our arguments? The first reason is going to be on time frame. Their arguments all rely on the nuclear plant to actually be built. Our argument is that when the nuclear material is in transition, the terrorists can steal the nuclear material and create dirty bombs, which means that it happens before the plants actually get built. And second is the fact that whenever a terrorist attack happens, no one cares about climate change. Proof of concept was 9/11 when we literally had no progress on climate because everyone was focused on the terror attack instead of looking towards things in climate change. There's no solvency for their argument. On their argument of climate, the first thing to extend is that they conceded Wasserman evidence from case. Wasserman indicates that nuclear facilities dump uranium and also have water levels 20 degrees Celsius hotter, which gets dumped into the ocean, killing algae and coral and fish. This prereqs climate change because the ocean is a massive suppressor of carbon, meaning that they have no solvency on their argument insofar as we win the Wasserman evidence. Second, the second thing to extend is that the transition is fast enough now. Their response to the climate evidence said, A, it's from 2017. We posted, we have enough solar panels and hydroelectricity, which weather doesn't affect to get us through. And B, climate doesn't say why we can't do it. That's just that it would be expensive, and our evidence finds that it's getting more cheap right now. C, which is the only we have the only evidence about emissions decreasing. Do you know that emissions are decreasing right now, which means the status quo is not try or die, it's getting better. The third thing to extend is that it's physically impossible to repurpose coal plants, which means it takes years to actually build because there are technical requirements that aren't met in the coal plants, which decks all their time frame and means that we can't transition fast enough. If you buy their time frame that it happens in 5 years, then we literally cannot build the plants in that time to be able to solve for climate change, which means you're losing the sequencing debate.
Let's talk a little bit about this repurposing argument. In the last speech, you say that it's physically impossible to turn coal plants into nuclear plants. Can you maybe align with your evidence that says it's physically impossible?
It's more that it takes too long. Like you can win, it's not physically impossible, but the warranting is extended in your summary.
The reason why is that the technical requirements of a nuclear plant are not the same as a coal plant, right? Like maybe you have maybe you have some of the power lines, but you aren't able to actually get the read.
Okay, sure. You can take a question.
Zeke, do you have anything in mind?
Can you isolate a resource where that happened?
Yeah, there's been plenty of resource wars over water. Specifically, I think there's a resource war brewing between India and Pakistan right now. I'll take another question. Let's talk a little bit about, you say that,
Actually, I have a question, right? Can you read me any piece of evidence that talks about transit materials being stolen? The only piece of link evidence that is reactors being vulnerable to exploitation. Where does materials in transit link come in?
It's not necessarily.
But that's what that's
No,
that
just to clarify.
was the link
The
that Vermeer
wait,
extended.
no, it wasn't.
Yes,
I can read the
Yeah.
You can tell me the Vermeer's work where the materials in transition will be more.
First thing, that was in the time frame wing, and second thing, it was an example,
Was.
right? Like the fact that the nuclear material is not secured per our evidence, which goes conceded in the summary speech, means that it's very easy for terrorist groups to get a hold of the nuclear material, make dirty bombs, and then quickly launch a nuclear attack, which leads to nuclear.
And the next like important part of that is our time frame analysis isn't necessarily it happens in transit. It's that it happens before the plant is actually operational because uranium is at the
But
plant.
none of your
before it
evidence says
actually-
that your link evidence about attacking an actual plant.
No,
Like that is
no,
what your
it's not.
evidence
It's
is.
about
That-
Let's
that
deal
is-
with uranium.
That's what the Earnhardt evidence is about.
I'll pull it up. I mean.
Also, like, this
It's
would be
just
so
not.
late to contest this.
It's not, if you're just like not extending the right.
Doesn't-
way,
This was the
it's
way,
pure.
this was the way that it was framed in second rebuttal, and it's been there since days.
I have it pulled up. Access material, they can never imagine Earnhardt, a nuclear attack, perfect tools is so chaos extremists have. So let me just come in a dirty bomb. Cash beat. Invest in nuclears, the title is literally SMRs are being used to make dirty bombs, that's the title.
That's a
Small
reactor.
modular reactors that have already been built, but I don't know that this is super productive, y'all can take a.
What do you mean already been built?
A reactor is something that has to be built, you can't call it a reactor unless it's been built.
Like, that's what
Yeah,
a
but
small.
the uranium
modular-
is there, it's not that it hasn't built, it's just that the uranium is there before it's functional.
Sure, you can get it.
Yeah.
We have like 20 seconds left, so we can just let go.
I guess I'll ask a question, like. You isolate India and Pakistan, is the root cause of why India and Pakistan are gonna go to war, resources?
No, but I think that resources accelerate conflicts, that's the thing, that resource wars are what end
Pretty sure
up
that's
giving
what's
the impetus.
accelerating.
No, but I think that resource wars can give the impetus for that to happen, but that's cost.
Alright. It's gonna start on the affirmative case, the comparative debate. And then the negative case. If everyone is good, time can start. Now, extend case, we're facing a fossil fuel over catastrophic one where we aren't being green technology, we naturally fall back into war, but only nuclear energy solids require less land materials and wind and solar is increasing on the weather last 3 times as long. However, uninvested is an issue, companies won't follow us to reduce upfront costs of growth. Done with repurpose existing infrastructure of duty. This result climate change based on fossil fuels and limits nothing that has lighting the CO2. A third is solar empirically reducing CO2 emissions of 2 tons a year and offsetting 2 years of emissions per month, and climate change is existential. They say the transition is fast enough. No, their evidence is literally about only the industrial sector's emissions going down. Our evidence holistically finds that nuclear reactors are better, but second, our clock average was conceded, which I'm going to first, so we specifically talk about the renewable grid isn't enough. So even if we're scaling up renewables, the grid cannot handle it, because it's not year one, which means we cannot fully scale up renewables. And then they say that all solve like weather issues and that we can't repurpose. Remember, even if we don't win the like full-on reactors, can be built small modular reactors, which take a lot less time, get built up faster, and projects that are already underway, which have not been completed, get sped up faster, is already existing construction in place, starting from scratch. At that point, the weighing is considered that climate change is step by step and exponential. Every time you could save it, if it's 1 year earlier, 2 years earlier, it pushes back the deadline. And you can see the fact that it starts resource wars from hotspots. When there's a lack of resources, people are less more likely to fight, and that causes bigger issues. That probably is the incentive for people to do more damage, and probably gives people the ability to run around the flag and do issues such as terrorism. And their time frame is not as fast as they say. Even if they win the fact that stuff gets stolen, people still have to build the bombs. There's a huge delineated time frame, a lot of steps. You should feel really uncomfortable. You don't even know at the end of the day which terrorist group is attacking. It's not specified. You know if it's being stolen, being translated, or if it's being stolen from an actual reactor, and you do not know how they're getting it. Remember, there's also going to be intervening actors because we have good national security, and national security is always utmost priority. They say that when we have bigger issues such as like 9/11, we focus away from climate change, but we say that climate change is what spurs people to do these things in the first place, to cause big grand gestures. On their case, they can see like the terrorists and the incentive, but the biggest thing is I urge you to look at all of their evidence. None of it specific, the story just changes. None of it says that materials get stolen in transit, which is the story that Romero gave you. Don't let Zeke bring a new story the next page. You do not know how reactors are being broken into. You do not know who is attacking. And last of all, you do not know how long it takes for a dirty bomb to then escalate into a full-on nuclear war that somehow kills us all.
Can we go? Their case, or our case? Can we go? Cool. The Wasserman Turner just conceded in their last speech, what they have dropped is that nuclear facilities, dumped uranium, and also it releases water that's 20 degrees hotter than the water around it, which kills things like plankton and also algae and coral, which hurts carbon sequestration, which is the prerequisite to their argument, because climate change increases if our biodiversity inside of the ocean goes down. It means we can no longer sequester carbon, which leads to an increase in climate change for their scenario, which they conceded link term. The second thing to extend is the transition is working in the status quo. They say that it's only industrial. No, it isn't. Our evidence indicates we already have enough solar panels to be able to facilitate us through the transition. Moreover, they say that CLAC is conceded, but it just isn't. They've dropped that. It is from 2017. We posted it from 2025. And moreover, that CLAC only says that it would be expensive, not that we physically can't do it, which is the proof of concept that emissions are decreasing year over year per only uniqueness about emissions inside of this round. Go to the Wayne debate. They say that they have linked into hotspots too, but if we're winning the time frame scenario, it doesn't matter. They say that it increases the risk of terrorism during climate change. If our time frame winning, it means we access our prerequisite before they do. So this prereq doesn't matter. They say that it takes time to build the bombs, but if we're literally giving them the uranium to do it, it exponentially ramps up the time frame of our scenario. And they say that intervening actors step up. There's also massive amounts of intervening actors for climate change, but if there's no security, we're linking into their scenario. At that point, go to the time frame winning. Our argument is that to be able to physically solve for climate change, the reactors need to be built and operational in the first place, but uranium is there before they are operational, which means they can steal the uranium before the operational capacity actually exists. So our scenario happens first, and you should prolong humanity as long as possible because it allows other actors to step up to solve back to their scenario, extend terror. They say that I changed the scenario. It was never about transition. It was an example Ramir gave, but extend the argument. Earth finds that there's no risk of nuclear terror now. Facilities are secure. Pathway funds that affirming creates dirty bombs. SMRs are decentralized and have low security. This allows terrorists to easily break into uranium and create dirty bombs under our noses. Sarker finds that the U.S. is uniquely key for nuclear terror. Right-wing groups that historically seek out nuclear weapons. He finds that nuclear terror causes extinction. One group using even a small dirty bomb would collapse society. Society countries would think another nation nuked them, forcing them to strike as well. Discuss international last out and all out nuclear war.
Fair enough.